Hello, everyone. This is Bill Spencer, and this is part of our ongoing series of trainings for Microsoft Teams. Today we have Sid Uppal, the Principal Engineering Manager on Microsoft Teams, talking about how the Microsoft Teams engineering organization uses Teams itself for DevOps. Sid, take it away.
Hey, folks. So let's dive in. So the things that we're going to talk about today is the bunch of DevOps integrations we have already in Teams, and how do we put them together to implement the engineering processes we have in place. So I'll touch on a bunch of topics, including how do we structure our teams so that people that are looking for information can easily find it. How do we run our daily scrums inside Teams? What are the situations where we have built custom integrations? Low code, no code type of things, and then how can you also integrate custom flows into Teams itself? So, so one of the first things that we need to figure out if you're trying to run a DevOps sort of process inside Teams is how to structure the channels inside Teams and how to structure the teams themselves. So one of the things we've done is we have a large team where everybody who works on Teams is part of. But then we have smaller teams as well for individual feature teams. So I expect that's like a pretty standard structure others would want to follow as well. Within a team itself, we tend to have like a standard set of channels. So or even different people have ended up with similar sort of notions. So this is also a pattern others can adopt. So we typically have a channel called announcements where the program manager, engineering manager, or an engineer, when something is ready to be released, would make a post and announcing this thing is available. Please help me test it, dog food it, whatever. And then we have another channel called spec reviews where program managers would post a spec that is ready for review to get feedback on it. We have channels for incident management where we have bots set up that would post whenever something is broken. And then we have channels for bug management as well. So kind of the Uber idea here is anything that matters to you in engineering while building software is coming to you in Teams. And it makes sense to have like well-defined channels where the purpose is either announcements or spec reviews, design reviews, or incidents, or bugs. So within these channels themselves, what happened over time is that we started having standard formats for messages. And the reason really is because there's so much information coming at you. It's having a standard format just makes it easy to process it. So you just switch into the channel, okay, this is about this spec review, you can kind of quickly scroll through it if it's of interest to you or not. So having standard formats helps, and I'll show you some examples of that. So this is an example of a demo team, which mirrors what we have internally. So in this case, we're highlighting that there are 3 channels. There is a channel called feature announcement. There's a channel where the GitHub notifications are being wired. So whenever somebody creates a pull request, which is a change, the GitHub connector posts into this channel, and then you can discuss the pull request here if you want, and then or click on a link, go to the pull request in GitHub, or add to a comment to the pull request from right here in Teams. And basically the Uber idea is that you have dedicated channels like this. This is an example of what a feature announcement looks like. So this tends to be pretty free form because everyone who makes a feature announcement wants a lot of kind of eyeballs on it. So people try to get creative on how they do the feature announcements. But the point here is that there is a well-defined channel where you can expect to find feature announcements. And so what people typically do is you would go to the notification settings of this channel and configure Teams to notify you whenever a new post is made in this channel, because this is where the features are being posted, which is relevant to most people working on the software. So we have a channel called bug detection and or dog food feedback, and the idea here is that as we build software, we also use it ourselves, and if we find issues, we want to tell each other, hey folks, I found this issue. Is someone looking at it? Is there a bug on this already? So this is an example of one where somebody was having an issue with finding a message and they made a post with a screenshot. Discussion happens, and then somebody posts a link to the bug so that we can kind of figure out what to do here. So this is also like a standard pattern that anybody who's building software, if you're building a game or whatever, you would want like a standard channel where people can come and report issues. And then folks who are building the software, like I said earlier, can set up channel notifications so that they get informed whenever somebody finds something broken, and they can jump in and help out. Spec reviews, it's again, the Uber idea is, something new is going to be built and it might impact the thing that I work on. So I want to be notified, and that's why there's a well-defined channel called spec reviews, where every program manager will make a post. I'm working on this feature. Here's a link to the feature. Here's a link to my Word document, which has the the spec of these are the things I'm planning to build. And then the designer jumps in. So in this case, Michael Forney is a designer. There's other program managers like Prem, in this case, is a program manager. Mao is an engineering manager. So it's basically a bunch of folks coming in trying to figure out how this impacts them. Again, the reason this works is there's a well-defined place to find about things that are coming down the line. And channel notifications is what keeps you in the loop and lets you know as soon as somebody makes a post here. So moving on from channel structures to one of the other big ways we use teams is to also do Scrum in it for agile processes that we follow. And these are some of the things we've set up. So we have a board and like a Azure DevOps board hoisted as a tab in Teams. Folks could be using Jira or Planner or Trello, but the Uber idea is you can have a tab inside a channel in Teams, and so everybody knows where to find the work that is being worked on by the team. And we also use Teams for doing scrums here. So let's see how that works. So in this example, we're going to start a scrum in the general channel. All you need to do is tap on the camera icon in the compose box, and it starts the meeting. And then everybody can see that there's a meeting happening in the channel. And other folks who are interested in the Scrum can jump in. And so the idea here is that you're able to run your Agile Scrum inside Teams without using any additional software. And all the context that you need to run your Scrum effectively is right there in Teams as well. So you can click on plus and create an Azure DevOps tab and bring the board in. And then during the Scrum, you can share your screen and then edit the items in there based on what people are working on or what they worked on yesterday and so on. So again, it's all your context for working on whatever you're working on is right there in Teams for you. So now we've talked about how to structure teams. How do you do scrums inside teams? So now we talk about so things will be built and then there will be bugs, and then how do you bring information about bugs into teams and figure out which bugs are super critical and get them addressed quickly. Again, this is a standard sort of thing any team building software would have. So so pull request is the channel where so we talked about the board in the previous slide. So somebody's working on something, they created a change request and they created a pull request. So now you can also be informed of pending pull requests by following this channel. So we have this channel called pull request where we've set up Visual Studio Team Services. It's called Azure DevOps now. You could be using Jira or GitHub, but the same idea applies, that you create a well-defined channel and then you set up a connector to notify this post into this channel whenever a new pull request is created. So other engineers in the team or the engineering managers can then follow the channel, set up the notification settings again, so that they get informed whenever somebody creates a pull request. They can jump in and discuss, okay, in this case, this engineer is modifying something, but it requires sign off from somebody else. So he just pings her from here. Okay, I got this sign off from Paula, blah, blah, blah. And then we pull in some EMs, GMs, whatever. And then kind of we are able to discuss the change here within Teams without having to kind of do random chats or emails or something. All that stuff is right here for you in Teams.
So Sid, the historic or legacy term is to follow the channel, but now it's to set up channel notifications, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Great. Just want to make sure we're on the same page. This is really cool. And you use Visual Studio, but it's possible to do this with some of those integrations you talked about on the second slide.
Yeah, so you can do it with GitHub, Jira, or I think almost all the kind of the famous ones are supported. And I'll talk about if you're using something that's not supported, what should you do about it. But the Uber idea is, there's a channel for a purpose, and then people who are interested in it set up their notifications, and then all the information gets wired into the channel. So that's sort of the Uber point here. All right. So release blockers. So this is the other part of building software, right? So we build stuff and then there are bugs, but some bugs are just much more critical than other bugs and they need more visibility. And in Teams organization, we call these things release blockers. So these are pretty bad in that you've got a bunch of engineers working on something, but somebody has a bug that is now preventing all of the product from shipping. So these sort of issues have to be addressed as soon as possible because it's impacting the work of a bunch of people. So the way we implemented that process is by again creating a channel with the purpose of tracking release blockers. And now in this case, it was so custom to Teams org that we had to build something of our own. So we built this bot called Drano. It's built on top of a bot framework. All the documentation for building bots on Teams is online, so anybody can build it really. But the idea here is if you have a process to manage items, like let's say you want to track stale bugs or any sort of other process you have around managing items in your backlog, um, you can actually create a channel and then build a custom bot. This is now easier. I'll also talk about Flow in like one of the slides that are coming, but you can build a custom bot or you can use Flow to kind of bring information about these bugs that are super critical into a channel so that folks can get on them quickly. So in this case for Drano, what it does is as soon as a bug is flagged as a ring blocker, it picks up the bug and then posts in the channel. It at mentions the engineering manager, the program manager, and the developer who the bug is assigned to. So the expectation is clear to everyone that if you get mentioned in release blockers, your heart rate jumps up all of a sudden because like it's a bad issue. So folks jump in, and the goal is to kind of quickly figure out, okay, is this really a release blocker? If not, we remove the release blocker tag. If it is a release blocker, then you figure out how to fix it quickly. Again, so having a well-defined channel called release blocker, and then having a bot that was able to mention the right people, kind of helped us implement this workflow inside Teams. And this is also a pattern that others can follow.
Thank you, Sid. So, and just so people can find these resources on the web, do they actually look up the term Drano?
No, Drano is internal. So in this case, what you would look for is how to build a bot in Teams, and I can even share these links later.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah. The idea here is if you end up with a scenario where you need some way to figure out these items are more important than others because maybe these have been sitting for too long or this has a really bad impact, you can create a channel for that sort of workflow and then set up something to post into the channel, and then folks should follow the channel, and if they get mentioned, they should prioritize looking at those things and helping address it ASAP. In our case, that's release blockers. It could be something else in other organizations. So we talked about bugs, and so now in our case, we also have something interesting, which is maybe specific to Teams org too much, but I don't believe so. I feel every company would have this sort of thing. So you build software, and of course you have bugs, and then teams are overwhelmed by bugs sometimes, and so they tend to kind of ignore their bugs, and that causes an issue in that all bugs look the same, but some bugs just might be really bad, but you didn't notice it because it was there in the pile of bugs you had. So we have this thing called a bug jail policy where we have set up some automation so that if you are a feature team and you have bugs assigned to you, if it's a P1 bug and it's older than 2 days, and if it's a P2 bug but older than a week, and so on. So we have this sort of policy there. And if you have any such bugs, we have a bot set up that will prevent your pull request from being merged if it is not fixing the bug. So this kind of sets up an incentive for the engineering managers, program managers for those feature areas to make sure they're on top of their bugs. Again, this is sort of a side effect of the scale that we are at, but I feel this should also be pretty standard because as your bugs are sitting in your backlog, you need some way to kind of make sure people are, the engineering managers, program managers are looking at the bugs. And I'll talk about how we did that in Teams. The other thing is, so once you did the Scrum, you built the software, you shipped it, you got bugs, and now if it's an online software, things will go wrong during life site, and then how do you kind of come together and fix issues quickly? So I'll get into life site next. So for the bug jail thing that I mentioned earlier, so this was again a scenario that was specific to Teams. There was nothing in our store that solves it. So in this case, we built a bot again, and this bot is called Bugoo. Again, the idea is you can build a bot like this on your own by using the APIs we have. So in this case, what Bugoo does is you just ask it to nag, and it basically maps the current channel to an area path inside inside Azure DevOps. So basically, it's trying to figure out for this team what are the bug jail bugs, and then for each bug that it finds, it starts a new channel conversation, and then pulls in the engineer that it's assigned to, mentions them, mentions the program manager and the engineering manager. And again, the idea is to fix this ASAP, because this is a bug jail. This is bug jail bug that is preventing the rest of your feature team from checking anything in. So Bugoo kind of, before this, it was very manual. What would happen is a pull request would get blocked by the bot, which was looking for bug jail bugs, and then the engineer would have to run the query, figure out all the bugs, and then come to the channel, and then tag the engineer who the bug is assigned to, program manager. So there's a lot of manual steps, and then it became apparent like we could just automate it. So we built a bot for that. So I guess the takeaway here would be that if you find yourself doing something manual over and over for a process that you have in place in your organization, you could actually build a bot for that. And the other sort of meta point with Bugoo was we could have set up this bots to automatically stay on top of bug jail bugs and mention engineers, but what we found in practice was people just started getting annoyed by this bot. So what we did is we implemented this thing called nag. So when Bugoo actually nags other people, it says who it's nagging because of. So it says, nagging upon request from Sid Uppal. And so then it's like passive aggressive. Like, I'm not a bad bot. I'm just doing it because somebody asked me to do it. So that kind of help, it's not like the bot it's spamming people. It's doing this. It's asking you to look at this because it's a serious issue and somebody is asking this issue to be looked at. Moving on to live sites. So this is, I'll show some of the real channels of like how we do this in Teams. So this is a kind of a demo version of it. So we create dedicated channels for incidents and not, so incidents are like, so you deployed software in production and then something goes wrong and it's some functionality is not working for some customers. So we use internally a tool called ICM, which is not available externally, but externally what you would find is things like PagerDuty or OpsGenie. So what we have done is we have set up channels where in our case, there's a bot called OB that I'll show later, makes a post saying there is this Sev1 issue or a Sev2 issue. And again, the workflow is everybody who needs to be involved in incidents has set up their channel notification settings to be notified. And then the bot will pull in the folks. So we have channels for different severity levels. So there's a channel for Sev1. And then if you have close dependency, so in our case, like the Teams organization depends very closely on another organization, which has the chat service backend, and we kind of talk about this in our architecture talks. But since the two teams work really close together, we actually have them as channels inside Teams, so kind of we can monitor each other's Sev1s really easily. And these channels are where we track the incidents, and then once an incident is done, we want to kind of go back and see what we could have done better. And we call these things postmortems, and so we have channels for postmortems as well. So this is an example of a bot informing a channel about an outage. So Proximus was built internally, and now we are looking into open sourcing like an app template that you could use to build bots like this. You should watch for that in the future, but internally we use something called Proximus, and then there's another thing called OB, but similar idea that whenever there's an outage, it posts into the channel, and at mentions the folks that are on call, and the primary DRI, the secondary DRI, the incident manager. And so this is also one of those channels that if you get an at mention here and then your team client says there's one unread message because you're at mention, you want to look at it ASAP. So you jump in and the bot started a new channel conversation. So kind of you see 18 replies here, and I'll show examples later where it goes up to like 200, 250 sometimes. So we discuss what's happening, how to mitigate it, what's the impact, and the bot kind of keeps informing the channel as things are changing. So when the incident gets mitigated, the bot would say the incident was just mitigated, or it was downgraded, or incident fires and somebody acknowledges it, and so on. So basically, the bot is keeping this channel informed about the latest status of the incident. So as like even an executive working on the product, you don't have to keep querying ICM or PagerDuty or whatever. You can just kind of set up your channel notifications and be informed when there are outages. And then you want to find out, okay, I just heard from a customer this thing is broken. You go into this channel, you find the conversation, and you know, okay, yeah, these folks are looking at it. It's mitigated, so you can tell your customer. So again, the idea is it just brings all the information about the product that you're working on right there to you and teams.
Yeah, I find this very helpful when a customer asks about the status of an issue. I'm able to, go to the search box at the top of Teams and then quickly find these, often in channels that I'm not regularly looking at. So it is a super helpful approach. And you say that we're creating an app template so other customers can duplicate this same bot. And those will be available at aka.ms/app templates, APPTEMPLATES. And we expect that in the first half of 2020, correct?
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Sid.
Yeah.
How would people respond to this? So where do you see typical responses? Are people, for example, bringing this to the attention of maybe the customer-facing program managers or the executives working on a particular issue? So they're not, in the ICM fields itself, but they might be as a reply to this bot post.
Yeah. So basically, you can also reply under this and ask. So if let's say you are in charge of comms for customers, you could come in here and periodically ask, okay, folks, what's the latest status? And you would know who the DRI is. So instead of just making a reply and then hoping somebody notices it, you can also mention the relevant folks and to get their attention and ask them for the status and then go update the comms portal or whatever that you're in charge of. I will show examples of how we do it with OB, which is pretty awesome. But the core idea is start to bring information about outages into Teams so that folks like Bill mentioned earlier can just go search, find the conversation, figure out what's going on, and then tell their customer about it. Or maybe you're another engineering team who depends on this other engineering team, and now this gives you a way to find out if they're having issues and what is the status of the issues if those impact you as well. So now I'll get into OB a little bit. So OB is this new bot that we're building internally, and so it basically integrates with ICM. So it does the thing that we showed in the previous slide. What Proximus does, it informs a channel. So it's a bit more powerful. It uses cards, adaptive cards. So in the app template we release, it is going to use adaptive cards and kind of help you get a workflow like this going. So it basically brings all the information to you about the incident right there. It uses color coding and stuff like that. So at a glance, you know what's happening with this issue. It pulls in the DRIs, basically the folks that are on call, the incident managers and so on. And then in this case, like Tegan was a communications manager, so she's able to jump in, figure out what's going on. We've also, the card itself has a field for scope. So in this case, the incident was just created, so it hasn't been populated yet. But the idea is that you can tap the edit button here. You see a dialog where you can give information about the scope. So that, like Bill mentioned earlier, you find this channel conversation because the customer said, I'm having issues, and you can quickly check the scope field and know if that is what might be the issue that your customer is facing. So scope would be things like, worldwide impact, or only impacting, 5 tenants. These are the tenant IDs and names. So, so the big benefits we have seen with this, concrete benefits that you can measure is time to engage on issues has gone down, which is something breaks. We really track how quickly our engineers jumping on it to start looking at it. So we call that time to engage. And because engineers are already living inside teams, if you bring this information in teams and the bot act mentions the engineer, the time to engaging on the issue really goes down. Because if it's another system, it probably sends you an email and maybe you missed it or something like that. But with teams, you're already there, so you kind of jump in right away. And because there was a well-defined place to find about issues, our comms kind of improved a lot. So like all the comms folks can just follow the channel where the bot is going to post about issues, and then they can figure out, oh, this is a Sev 1, which is pretty bad. I need to inform my customer, so they can kind of get the information right here. The workflows we had before this were kind of not working as well. The time to engagement from comms was high. The other thing this thing does is OB does, and the template will also give you ways to do it, is it edits the incident back. So any updates you make here are pushed back into the incident in ICM, and you could do the same thing and wire it up to write it into PagerDuty and so on. And then we attach the additional info. So SHD is basically the comm stuff. So you can, the ticket, the card here can have link to the comms comms that we have out. So if you see that's not accurate or something, you could ask for that to be edited. So it really kind of brings everyone together who cares about incidents and helps us mitigate issues quickly. And it also helps keep everybody in the loop on outages, so everybody who needs to know is easily able to find it. And net, it's basically what Master Yoda is saying right here. If there's an outage, we must mitigate it quickly. So these are some more examples of how OB works. So an outage happened, OB will make a post. So at a glance, so you switch into the channel, you see this card, and you know right away that, okay, there is an active issue. It has been acknowledged, which means a DRI is looking at it. And you can tap on some buttons to get more info. So let's say you're like, okay, it looks like this team is looking at it, but who are the primary and secondary? I need to find out what's going on. So you tap on the details button or DRIs button, gives you more info. And you can message these folks in Teams. And all the important links are right there as well. So again, the idea is bring everything that's relevant about the incident right there to you in Teams. I can kind of skip over. These are all internal, but the idea is you can all bring links to important kind of dashboards you have along with the card that gets posted in Teams.
So integrating with internal tools and dashboards.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's great about this is it's a combination of off-the-shelf integrations like Visual Studio with custom integrations that you've created like Bugoo and Obi.
Yeah. So these bots are built on top of bot framework, and if the meta point is you want to bring information about the outage or the bug right there into Teams. If you're able to find something in the store that does it, you should use that. If you find that you have a workflow or something where what is there in the store doesn't quite meet your need, you can also build a bot of your own using bot framework. So now I'll show you some easier ways of doing it, right? So bots are powerful, but let's say you want to just start with bringing information into Teams. Like that is very easy to do. You don't need to build a bot for that. So you can just use an incoming webhook. So go to the channel and then click on connectors. So go to the channel where you want to start bringing something and click on ... select connectors, and then create an incoming webhook. So you just give this thing a name, and you can change the icon, and it will give you back a URL. And all you need to do is make an HTTP post to this URL, and that message will appear inside Teams. And for these endpoints, we do support cards, so you can actually get like a pretty comprehensive, nice layout, which gives you all the information that you care about at a glance. But this is, a very easy way to start bringing things into Teams for cases where you cannot find something in the store that satisfies your needs. You don't need to build a bot or anything. All you need to be able to do is make an HTTP post to this URL, which you're probably already familiar with. So this is really key. We see a lot of usage on incoming webhooks in this manner. So you get started like this, and you can start collaborating on things. It cannot do all the things bots can, right? You cannot ask this thing to like go and restart the database or something like that. Incoming webhooks are only good for bringing things into Teams, but this is a great place to start to kind of start bringing your organization, getting them used to just finding everything they need in Teams itself, and then slowly you can graduate over to using bots. So flow is kind of my favorite thing these days. So flow is somewhere between writing your own bot and an incoming webhook. So flow is very easy to use. There's a bit of a learning curve, but it's not maybe as much as bots, where you have to kind of learn bot framework as well, though I believe that's easy. With flow, it gives you like a diagrammatic sort of way to set up a workflow. And so you can set up something where it says when an incident fires in PagerDuty, and then actually for PagerDuty we have a connector, but let's say you had like an inbuilt homegrown sort of system that does track outages or something. You could easily set up a flow that gets triggered when an HTTP post is made, and then that flow could then post into Teams. I'll show an example. So in this case, this is the flow. So we set up the scenario a little bit, right? So our clients, when people are using them, Teams client is collecting telemetry on whether thing is working or not, and it pushes this telemetry up back to a database. There is no customer PII in there or anything. It's just this scenario was started, did the scenario finish successfully or not, and so we needed a way to like every week look at these scenario successes, like how, let's say people clicked on the ... how many people were able to load the connectors dialog successfully. So that would be a scenario. So we wrote an automation in Flow. This is what it looks like. We just said, run it every Monday at 10. And it uses Kusto because that is the thing we use. You could be using some other, maybe App Insights or something where all the telemetry is going. It runs a query and then posts a message in Teams as Flowbot. So this is another example where incoming webhook would not have worked, because if we use incoming webhook, I would need to write some sort of service that runs a query against Kusto periodically and then post into Teams. It's more work. Plus, I'll have to figure out how to authenticate with Kusto, which probably might take me a couple of days, But with Flow, all of that information, all of that stuff is right there. So all I have to do is set up a recurrence and then give it the query, and then it'll post into Teams. I don't have to get into hosting or any of that stuff. It just takes care of everything for me. So this is what it looks like. So it was, in our case, this is the post it makes, right? So this was a scenario. These many successes happened. These many failures. This was the availability. So the feature team can just monitor this channel and then see if. So we have alerts set up already, which informs us if there's an outage. But sometimes it's also useful to kind of have something that runs every week and looks back at the week's worth of data and tells us if the availability was below. So this gives us some kind of another way to figure out maybe we missed an issue, maybe an alert didn't fire that it should have. Like in this case, upload custom app from App Store at 90 is clearly there's something wrong. So as the engineer owner for this or EM, you can then ask, right? Was there an incident on this issue? Why was this happening, and so on. So again, so you can use Flow to kind of also implement your workflows, and then Flow is a very easy way to kind of get things going. And there are these other examples of how we use Flow. So these are all real examples. So we have on-call rotation that lasts a week. So I needed a way to kind of find out how many incidents of various severities did we have. It was a manual process, and that's a good indication. If you find yourself doing something manual every week and it's sort of you're not really using your brain. You could just automate it at that point. So I use Flow to automate it. It queries our incident management database, figures out how many incidents of various types we had, makes a post. 0, 1, 2 are bad. So this is what I'm looking for. Like, did we have a 0, 1, 2 last week? And then also severities, like how many sev 3s did we have? If there are too many, that's also an indication of there's something wrong. So for Flow, the other thing we had was often people would want to know, so it's not really an outage, but it looks like it's impacting a customer. So I'm not sure it's a bug or an outage. Let me just ask the on-call to look at it. So in this case, you could actually go to the ICM portal, or if people are using PagerDuty, you could go to PagerDuty and figure out who's on call. But what we found was it's just easier if something just posts at the end of the rotation saying, okay, these are the new on calls, right? So our rotation ends at 4 p.m. on Fridays. So we set up a Flow automation. So it queries the on calls and posts into channels, like a very simple sort of automation. But this now folks know that if they need to figure out who the on call is, they can just go to this channel where they know this bot post, scroll up, and then, sorry, scroll up, and then find the post that says who the on-call is, and they can just ping that person. So in this case, it's Vu and Leon. You can ask, hey, guys, I'm seeing this issue. Not sure if it's a outage or maybe I'm doing something wrong. Can you look at it? So this is great for like these, I'm not sure if it's an outage sort of scenarios. So this is hygiene. So also, I think this is something every org will have, and this is where they may do things slightly differently. So in our case, there are various flags or attributes on work items in Azure DevOps that can, get out of state or people don't update them. So we track these things in ShipRoom, and I'm one of the engineering managers, and I want to make sure my stuff is always great. So I set up an automation that runs at 2 p.m. on Tuesdays, I think, and it runs the query that I know ShipRoom will run, and it flags all the items for me that I need to clean up. So this is
portion when we post this on YouTube. So feel free, everyone who's on the call, to go off mute and ask Sid questions.
Hey, Sid, David Goodhand from out of New York. Can you talk a little bit about, you talked about the process and that was fantastic. Can you talk a little bit about the culture? Like, has it made the team more agile? Are we doing more with less? What was the impact of switching from like an email-based notification system to doing everything in Teams?
I think it's knowing, because you're in Teams anyway. So once everything is in there, you find people are responsive, much more responsive than they would have been over email, because email being asynchronous, sort of the expectation is not there that people are looking at it. With Teams, there is what we find is people are like all the release blockers or incidents, people are just quicker to engage on issues. It's also useful for folks that are new to the team. So because if if you're a new person joining a team and your team used email, you start off with an empty inbox. So you kind of have no context on, okay, this incident happened, how was this handled in the past? Or I'm seeing this bug, has this been reported before? With Teams, you can just search and find, and there is a bunch of this kind of learning aspect, which is easier as well if your organization uses Teams for chat ops and DevOps. And I think that's a pretty big part of it. So there is like faster engagement on things, and then there's also this learning aspect where even the incident, right? Like, let's say there's an incident happening and I got nothing to do with it. It's not my team, but there is still an opportunity for me to learn from it because it's happening right there in the channel. The other thing is, like, I'm an engineer, so I don't really, get involved in a competitive sort of analysis or stuff like that. But I'm curious, so once in a while, I want to just go and read about stuff like that, because I know that there is a channel called Competitive Info. It also allows me to kind of learn about things that I may not otherwise be involved in on a day-to-day basis. Because if it was an email, I would probably not get added on that email, right? But in Teams, I know that there is this channel where those folks are discussing this stuff, and I can follow it, maybe chime in once in a while. So I think better collab, better learning, and then also kind of finding about things that you're curious to kind of expand your horizons, sort of thing. I think it's great when you start using Teams in this way.
Any other questions?
Hey, Sid, I posted in the chat, but curious if we migrated some of those workflows you showed us from Slack originally, if we were using that, and also if there's any chatter right now around, hey, Slack can do this. We have our own flavor of DevOps, but it would be really nice if we had this, XYZ super popular tool, in kind of the way you're thinking about that.
So I think in all the conversations that I've been part of, what I find is it's a set of folks who actually use the APIs available in Slack to build something. So it's basically about how motivated you are. We have the APIs available. You can build all that stuff in Teams as well. So you are able to bring stuff that you have working in Slack onto Teams. It's a matter of getting your hands dirty and doing it. That's been my takeaway. And then from all the other bots around,
so Sid, just to summarize, you're saying no major gaps between Teams and Slack.
No real gaps. Like you can implement the same workflow inside Teams as well.
So there might be like Jenkins, we have an integration, but maybe there's another CI tool out there like Circle CI. Even though that doesn't exist, we have an alternative to it. Or you might be able to build something custom. So maybe it's like can you get that thing that you're already used to out of the box? No, but you can do the same functionality today. There's no gap there, but it might be a preference thing. Is that accurate?
Yeah. And then if a lot of folks are asking for Circle CI, I'm not sure if we have it, but if we didn't, we can kind of figure out how to get that done as well. So if the engineering org can work on it, but if it's not there today and you need it right away, you have multiple options. You can either use incoming webhooks, or you can use Flow, or you can build your own bot to bring that, start bringing that stuff into Teams and start kind of reaping the benefits of it.
That's awesome.
And we do have an integration with Circle CI, by the way, in the store.
I was just totally doing it as a hypothetical. Like I think across the board it's sort of catching up or caught up, like what you're describing. I was just kind of curious your take.
Right. And conversely, go ahead, Sid. I'm sorry.
Sorry. So my sense is it's not, whether there are ways to get that thing working in Teams. I think the obstacle that you would face as somebody who built this in Slack is, how easily can I get it? Like I built this bot already that works in Slack. What is like the cheapest way for me to get it working in Teams? I think that is where the challenge is. Mm-hmm. Because maybe the code is very tied to Slack, and it's not, that's the problem you have. Like, how do I take this code and make it work against Teams? If you're starting from scratch in Teams, you could actually build something like that, but the challenge you would have is, I already have this thing working in Slack.
Yeah.
Right. And Sid, conversely to the question, what are the things that are specific to Teams that Slack doesn't have? Things like tabs and some of the other integrations that you were showing. What did you show today that's Teams only?
I think like compose extensions, message extensions, where you can paste a link and it turns into cards, is pretty powerful. We have tabs, like Bill mentioned earlier. We also have personal apps, so you can have like an experience of your app that is tuned for a certain user. So they open the app, they can have tabs inside it that shows, like, let's say the bugs assigned to them or the work items assigned to them and so on. There's also like calling video bot support that is in preview. So, and then I think the Flow integration that we have is pretty powerful as well. So there's enough unique things within Teams also.
The other aspect that I think is underappreciated is Teams is a tool for everyone. So what goes on in the DevOps is often, critical to a broader audience than maybe using Slack today. So for the opportunity for executives, other parts of the organization, people like myself in a customer-facing role, to be able to drill in and find the information when they need it. That is, often not the case, in the Slack implementations I've heard from customers.
Yep.
And do we have a story of the engineering team migrating anything, even if it was not like Teams is used across the whole organization now, but did we have pockets of Slack where we migrated them? Like, is there a story there? If there's not, that's fine. I was just wondering if we have that.
I think Bill will have to take that. Like we've been pulled in some conversations. I'm not sure if they've finished the migration, but they're working on it. Several customers are.
Right. So internally, there are engineering teams that have moved from Slack, and I think there's two aspects to your question, Kevin. One is, have they moved the processes? And yes, no issue there. In terms of migrating the content, there's a couple different approaches. And, one of the things that people always ask for is, can I just reduplicate this content as in a Teams channel? And there's a number of issues around authentication and, impersonation. Saving the metadata is the challenge that we're, working on an API in order to make that easier. But, saving it out as an HTML, and then saving the Slack content out in HTML, and then having that as a tab within one of the channels that Sid was showing, that is, a common migration scenario today. We'd like to improve that, and some customers are asking for more. They'd like all the metadata preserved and the ability to search up by person's name, something that might have happened in the past, and that is something we're working on. So we're at time. If there's any more burning questions, let me know. I'm just going to bring up this slide as a summary of resources of that we talked about today. To request Sid's presentation, email teamsdevops@microsoft.com. To learn about the bots, connectors, and cards that Sid showed today, this kind of long URL, but Deploy Apps Microsoft Teams landing page has the links to all of those. The app template for Obi, now this bot's not, the name will change, and it's not available until the first half of 2020, but all the app templates can be found at aka.ms/app templates. And then to learn about Microsoft Flow, go to flow.microsoft.com. Thank you very much, Sid. I really appreciate it. I appreciate everyone joining relatively early, at least Pacific time, and really appreciate this approach because I think many customers are going to find this very helpful.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.